let's take a quick tour through the Pfaff Quilt Expression 4.2 sewing machine and just get familiar with some of the buttons and how they work. So as you watch the rest of these videos on sewingmastery.com, you can find and understand where these buttons are that we are referencing. So as you notice, first off, you have all your stitches pictured at the top. One thing we highly recommend is that you sew out each one of these stitches, maybe make yourself a little stitch book, and you will find that this truly will come to life when you see these stitches sewn out in thread. They look better than just the pictures on the top. As you want to pick those different stitches, so for example, if you want stitch number 80, the keypad here will dial in any stitch that you want. When you turn the machine on, you might have a blank screen. So turn the information button on, the I, and now it will tell us what foot we need to use, whether we need stabilizer, if the IDT is engaged or the feed dogs are up or down. Even right here, it just tells us what our tension is. And that is nice because as you pick different stitches, like for example, if we pick a buttonhole, stitch number 33, your tension changes based on the stitch that you're actually chosen. That way the machine can get you in the right ballpark and then you can alter it from there. But that is kind of an automatic tension feature that this machine has. When you go to pick a stitch, let's just go back to a straight stitch. We have up here, in a straight stitch, we have needle position. So we'll move the needle position left or right. You'll also be seeing it happening on the screen. So if you make something bigger or longer, you'll see it growing as you go. So for example, if we pick stitch number 5, the zigzag, if we make that stitch wider, you see the stitch getting extra wide and also longer. This is actual size, if that helps you know what it's going to look like before you start. The other thing is as you've made any changes, you'll see highlighted numbers. To get back to the normal setting, all you have to do is pick that same stitch number or go to another stitch and come back. So let's do the same stitch number. I'll just choose stitch number 5. And without me having to find where that normal setting was, it already clears it out for me. So that's super easy. The other thing that you have is kind of an Alt button, which allows us to change different things like density and also needle position for our decorative stitches. So depending on which screen you're actually looking at, you may have some different choices depending if this button is pushed or not. Once again, I'm going to just touch stitch number 5. You'll see everything go back to normal settings. We also have, let's kind of continue down here, we have what is called function 1 that will get us to our tapering menu. And when you touch here, try it one more time, there you go, you can actually taper any of the stitches at the beginning and end. So depending on your choice, you can have any of the degrees from different tapering areas. We'll just leave it at that. That's a whole video that we'll do. And also F2, or function 2, is our tie-off menu. So you can have it lock the stitches at the beginning by highlighting that, have them lock at the end, and even have them cut at the end. And so those are things that you can turn on and will be kept as an active setting even when you turn the machine off. So if you are loving this feature, which it's growing on me, I like this. When you turn the machine on and off, this comes back at the last setting that you've had it on. So if you don't want them set, just darken the boxes and then just push F2 to get out of that. So it's kind of those little menus off to the side. You have a settings area. In here we have thread tension, settings for double needle, our stitch width safety. That would mean that if you only have a single whole throat plate or your 1/4" foot, it will keep you from going zigzagging and breaking needles. The free motion feet, the pressure foot pressure, and probably a few other things like balance and screen, auto foot lift, balance, language, and alarm, whether you want your alarm on or off, or contrast of the screen to change, and what version of the machine you're working with. So quite a few things in there. We also have the mirror images. So if you wanted to pick a stitch, let's do a stitch that's not truly all the way symmetrical. I'm looking. How about 171? So these have the little leaves. You can mirror image them left to right and also flip-flop them from tail to end. So you have all 4 more mirror images at that point. In this area is our sequencing or memory programming area. If you go ahead, I'm just going to go back to a straight stitch here. If you open up the sequencing area, you will notice you have your alphabets and choices. You've got 2 alphabet styles to choose from. You have uppercase and lowercase, and as you pick a letter, you can spell out, here's A, B, and C, and then we can sew those letters. So we'll get into all the sequencing features as you go. Notice I'm touching the OK button, sometimes using the arrows to move left or right within the screen. We'll close out the sequencing and come over to this side of the machine. So on the first row here, we've got the needle stopping in the up or down position. So if you have your presser foot down and you want your needle to always stop in the down position when you sew, just engage that so the light shows. And you'll notice that the needle will stop down, but then the foot comes up. So it's in a little pivot position. Love that feature. It's a great time saver. If you don't want that, just push the button and now it will always stop in the up positioning. We have a tie-off feature, so this will be something I'll get into and really show you how that works. A stitch restart button, so when you're sewing a decorative stitch, you can have it restart at the beginning if you've stopped in the middle, and also it's a way to get just one repeat of a stitch, and also for it to end at the end of the stitch. So again, we'll get into how that actually works so nicely. Your presser foot up or down, let me show you this. I'm going to touch the selective thread cutter and pull my fabric out so you can see this. On the foot with the arrow pointing up, if the foot is up at the normal position, pushing it again brings it up really high. So that's extra high, so extra thick fabrics can get in there. If you lower the presser foot down manually with the button, it'll go all the way down, but if you push it again, it pops up just enough that you can wiggle the fabric left or right and truly get exactly where you want it to be. So easier to position closer to the fabric than if the foot is up in the air and you might not know where it's actually going to come down to. So each one has 2 touches, each doing one extra high and one bringing it to a pivot position. But as soon as you start to sew, that foot's going to naturally go down to the fabric and you don't have to push this button every time you start to sew. We did see where the scissors are working. Oh, here's the speed control. Let me show you this. So right now you're at full speed ahead, super fast. If you touch this speed control button, you'll notice the symbol will come up at a reduced speed. Kind of tell it's a little bit slower there. If you touch and hold this, anytime there's a little triangle in the bottom corner of a icon or a button, that means touch and hold it, and something else will come up on the screen. So if we really wanted to slow this machine down, we could bring it down to a much slower speed, and when you confirm it, then that would be the speed. So back to full speed means just making sure that that image is no longer on your screen when you go. All right, so let me sink the needle down. We're going to do a quick little pivot around here, because the next thing I want to do is show you how you can stitch out those decorative stitches without even holding your foot on the foot control, because you have a start-stop button. So of course, if you're at the full speed, that's really fast. So if you want to adjust it down just a little bit, you can have it sew without having your foot control. So if you forgot your foot control, you're not totally lost. You can sew with this machine without it. You do have your reverse button. I'm going to show you there's 2 ways to use your reverse button. And I think that's kind of all the stitches and buttons. So we'll get into using these throughout all the videos. As you'll see, I always put in a little extra bonus material as I'm talking. So if I think of something else that a button can be done, I'll make sure to include it. So sometimes when you watch some of our videos, even though it looks like a very simple topic, you might want to watch it because there's always little tips and extras that I can give you for this fantastic Pfaff Quilt Expression 4.2 sewing machine.